mom's mom from his father, all the way back, is that family, and especially because, like I said, some of them did own hotels and things like that, they really wanted to present themselves as respectable people. And so when he lost that accent, it was interesting to me, and it didn't really dawn on me until later in life that that's probably why I don't have an accent, is because I went with him so many times and I heard him on the phone, and unconsciously it was sinking in. And he was very much for speaking perfect English and for pronouncing words correctly. And like I said, even with a ninth grade pre-civil rights education, he was very well read. He could speak on a lot of different subjects. And my mom went to the same junior high, high school, and elementary school I did. So she actually received her diploma. She's now a CNA, a certified nursing assistant. So she very much valued education as well. And even though she did have an accent, she still wanted, I call it selective accent, because there are some words that she speaks that are perfect English, and there's some that have that kind of hick accent. So the West Virginia accent shows up in some of her words and in some it doesn't. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But with the cultures mixing and me having part black and part white, which is pretty much what they called it in West Virginia. They don't make distinctions. It's black and white. All through elementary school, I didn't have to really choose one or the other. They let me put half black, half white, even though there were other things involved in there, and there's other cultures involved in there. Those were the choices that they had. When I got to high school, that's when they started making me choose, which I thought was interesting, because I had to choose either black or white. And being multiracial, you really have no idea where to go with that, because I'm pretty much, I love all parts of my culture. I don't want to have to choose one or the other. And so if you are multiracial and you've been through this, you know where I'm going with it, but it's very difficult to have to choose, so they make you choose. And there was a time when there was a rule on the books, and this was before civil rights, that if you had one drop of black blood, then you were considered black. I had to go with that. I mean, that's really the only thing I had to go by. That was a rule that was meant to keep people from voting, because at the time, if you had one drop of black blood, you could not vote. So that was why the rule was in place. And so I went with that rule. My classmates, who knew me, knew that I was part black and part white. Those who didn't know me, you can't really tell by looking at me. I can, what they call, pass as Caucasian. I never tried to. Anybody who knew me knew that I was multiracial, because, again, I love every part of my heritage, and I'm very proud of every part of my heritage. So those who knew me knew. And now I grew up with a lot of, I'm going to call it ignorance, because that's kind of what it was. They didn't know. A lot of my classmates did not come in contact with anybody other than somebody of the Caucasian race, because they weren't in that community. In downtown Huntington, in the actual city, there was a lot of African-American population. There was a very huge black population in the inner city. On the outskirts where I went to school, there wasn't. It was all Caucasian. And because most of them led a pretty sheltered life, they had never come in contact with anybody of a different race. And I remember being in 7th grade, and I was sitting in science class, and somehow the topic of multiracial came up, and one of the little girls raised her hand and asked the question of, if somebody is half black, half white, do they have a line going down their body separating the two? Now, I didn't raise my hand because I was a little too shy to. Even though I was proud of my heritage, in those days, I was very, very shy. I didn't raise my hand, but I was just kind of thinking how sad it was that she didn't know these things, that she'd never been in contact with somebody, or that she knew, even though somebody was sitting right there. But she didn't know that she came in contact with somebody that was half black and half white. So she didn't know this. And it was a little sad to me, because she was missing out on so much. And a lot of my classmates were missing out on so much of not being able to see people of different races and talk to people of different cultures and see what their heritage is and see what their traditions are compared to what they have in their families. So it was a little interesting to me. But I kind of grew up with that. I dealt with the racism and things like that. They weren't directed so much at me because, like I said, not many people could tell that I was multiracial. But I did grow up around it. And that, I think, made me even more proud to be multiracial because I knew that I would have no right to be like that because I am part Black, I am part Irish, I am part Native American. So how could I hate these cultures when I am part of them? And so it made me curious about where I came from. It made me curious about the African American culture. It made me curious about the Native American culture. It made me curious about all of these things. So even though I can't say that I'm an expert on any of these cultures by any means, I can tell you what they mean to me, and I can tell you the traditions that my family had, because you're going to see this in different people. You're going to see different cultures, different traditions, and different ways that their family dealt with being multiracial or even a single race. No two families do things the same way. So with me, I had my dad's side of the family. I had that former slave mentality of being happy and being, trying to search for the right word here, but it's being happy with what I had and being proud of who I am and appreciating. That's, I think, what I really wanted to say, appreciating what I have. When my great-grandmother and even my grandmother, and to an extent even my father, didn't have the same opportunities that I have. I am actually almost done with getting my master's in psychology. That was unheard of pretty much for an African American before civil rights. It was very, very difficult for especially an African American woman to go through and get a master's degree. It was very difficult. So I appreciate what I have. I appreciate the opportunities that I have. And that side of the family made me really appreciate that. And knowing that I have people that were in my family that were slaves, that didn't have a choice, that were treated as property and treated less than human. I always think back on that. That's always in the back of my head. So I know that that's there. With my mom's side of the family, knowing that I come from farmers who worked day and night to put food on the table and that they didn't have a whole lot and what they mainly had was family. Knowing that I have that and makes me appreciate my family more because that's all they had in those days. And so those bases form who I am today. I value education. In fact, I've got a couple of different degrees because I was not sure of what I wanted to go into. And so I value education very much. I value everything that I have, and I value family. I love my traditions. I love my holidays. I love being around family at those times of year. So that goes into who I am as well. And with the Native American side, the Cherokee, I haven't really studied a whole lot with them, and I really do want to because the Native American culture is so incredible to me. It's so rich in tradition, and so in a way, to me, it's kind of mystical with some of the things that they had, and I think it's very interesting. And I know I had a chief somewhere in my background because I think it was my great-great-grandmother on my dad's mother's side of the family who married a chief's daughter. So I know I have a chief in my family somewhere, and I'd love to go back and see that. But that side of the family is very much a mystery to me, but something that I would like to uncover at some point. And with those traditions, knowing that, an entire culture pretty much was almost wiped off the face of the earth, knowing that makes me appreciative of what I have as well. So all of these aspects, all of this cultural aspects go into who I am. And it's always going to be with me. and I'm always going to be appreciative of that. And if I am lucky enough to have a family one day, I'm going to pass these traditions on to them. I'm going to make sure